If you've got pain on the inside part of your elbow when you golf, then let's have some real talk. The regimen of rest, ice, and medication you're currently doing likely isn't cutting it. If you want to start seeing progress and not miss any more time playing golf, then start with these recommendations to get you feeling better now.
Golfer's elbow is a pain in the butt, but truly it's actually a pain from the tendon or bone on the inside part of the elbow. It is most commonly seen in the trail elbow for golfers, and there are two main reasons why this can develop.
Number one, repetitive overuse. This happens when golfers do too much swinging too quickly, which we see at the beginning of the season, or too much stress over an extended period of time, which is what we see as the golf season progresses. A simple rule to follow is when the stress that you're applying to tissue is greater than the tolerance that it can handle, this is usually when injuries like this occur. Number two, heavy contact with the ground on impact. Many golfers hit the ground before the ball, which creates a ton of stress on the wrist and elbow region, which can cause a lot of stress on the inside part of the elbow on your trail side. This could also be due to how you swing, but that's for another video. Also, just a word of caution, if you're having pain that extends into the hand or experiencing tingling or numbness, further evaluation is needed to address this issue, as it could be coming from somewhere else other than just the elbow. So here's a problem with the rest, ice, and medication routine you've been doing over the last few weeks or months with little to no progress. Rest deconditions tissues, which is why your symptoms come back when you start to try and swing again. Ice, while it might feel good, can definitely prolong symptoms and potentially make your symptoms worse if you keep using it over and over again. Medications, lastly, can mask discomfort, giving you a false sense of how the elbow feels. We work with so many golfers that take medication just to get through a round of golf, which is not healthy long term. Let's get right into the exercises that will help you truly resolve your elbow pain for good.
Exercise 1 is geared to improve your wrist mobility to help reduce constant stress on the inside part of your elbow. Have your palms turned away from your body, which will create a big stretch through the forearm muscles that attach to the inside part of your elbow. Sit back until you feel the mild stretch and then return to the start position. Once you get comfortable with this position, you can progress to lifting your knees off the ground, which will further cause stress to the forearm muscles to help rebuild them back up. Exercise number 2 is all about building up the muscles in the forearm. The key here, though, is when you lower the weight down, you want to make sure that the weight extends into your fingertips to work through a full range of motion. This is really going to help get that nice stretch through the forearm, but also, again, build the strength through that full range of motion, which is really needed in a golf swing. Exercise number 3, you're going to use a light weight, and you're going to hold on to the bottom of that weight and rotate your hands so that your palm faces the sky. Go only as far as tolerated early on, but as you progress, you can use a longer implement like a stick or a golf club to help create more stress around the elbow to help make that tissue more durable over time. Lastly, you're going to take a circular band and step on it and have the palms open and facing towards the sky. Curl the band up while keeping the hands open, and then once you curl up, from there press out, which creates more stress to the shoulder, elbow, and wrist. By working on all three of these areas, it will help reduce the overall amount of stress on the elbow. Once that becomes easier, then you can progress to making a fist around the band, as that added grip will stress the elbow more. All right, so here's some things to consider. The pain that you're experiencing when you're working on these exercises should be no higher than a 2 or 3 out of 10 to not create more stress to that area that it can handle. You want to be able to monitor your symptoms over about a 24 to 48 hour time frame to see if your symptoms are more elevated than normal or if they're okay. Having discomfort is not a bad thing. It just depends on how intense or how long those symptoms hang around for. If your symptoms are elevated, then you might need to reduce the sets or reps that you're doing. If they're under control, then you want to stick with that plan and progress as tolerated. You're going to perform these movements every other day to make sure that you're not overdoing it early on. So next time someone tells you to stop golfing and wait for your pain to go away, you now know that a proactive approach is going to be a better solution. Remember, this type of issue isn't going to go away overnight. Be consistent and also patient with the exercises, and you'll see that elbow pain go away so you can get back on the course. I'm Doc Russ, and I help everyday golfers perform like the pros.